John Alba had an exclusive for Sports Illustrated this week on a lawsuit filed against Jon Moxley and AEW for negligence, civil assault, and battery by a former production crew member. Let me read to you here from this story. A production crew member who has worked with All Elite Wrestling since 2019 has filed a civil lawsuit against the company and AEW World Champion Jon Moxley. In it, he alleges various degrees of negligence by AEW and Moxley, alongside civil assault and battery against Moxley concerning an incident on Dynamite in 2023. The lawsuit was filed against the parties on May 30th in the Wayne County Circuit Court by Christopher Dispenza, a longtime wrestling and entertainment production crew member who started doing contract work with AEW in 2019. Dispenza is not a direct employee of AEW and provided services to Broadcast Service Group, which supplies crew for the company. His legal team told the Takedown on SI that he has not done work with AEW since December 5th, 2024, and was demoted by Broadcast Service Group to the role of carpenter without explanation. As of Monday morning, it had not yet received a response to the filing from the promotion. Dispenza claims that he suffered severe neck and shoulder injuries as a result of being shoved to the ground unexpectedly by Moxley during a match with Kenny Omega. Dispenza alleges in the lawsuit that the incident resulted in him requiring cervical fusion surgery, shoulder surgery, and treatment for other unspecified injuries. Dispenza said that the injuries occurred on the May 10th, 2023 edition of AEW Dynamite in Detroit. There, Moxley faced Omega in a cage match, which ended up spilling to the outside. No, you're telling me a steel cage match ended up outside the cage? I don't believe it. Moxley went to grab a screwdriver to use on Omega, and in doing so, shoved Dispenza to the ground. The lawsuit claims Moxley was supposed to only grab the screwdriver, and Dispenza took an unplanned fall as a result of being shoved. His legal team alleges that this is an example of civil assault and battery, claiming that in allegedly deviating from the script, Moxley either showed intent to harm Dispenza or, at a minimum, a complete disregard for whether harm was a result. The lawsuit alleges that Moxley had a history of disciplinary issues before this incident involving other people while under AEW's employ, agency, and/or contractual relationship. It also says that past disciplinary offenses by Moxley include a documented history of unpredictability, as well as a lack of control by defendant AEW, all of which were known or should have been known to the defendant, AEW, at the time of this assault. However, multiple high-level AEW sources with knowledge of Moxley's working history with the company told the Takedown on SI that they were unaware of any history of disciplinary issues with Moxley, noting that he is respected within the promotion by talent and management. One referred to him as a locker room leader and disputed the characterization of Moxley given in the lawsuit. Filing also claims Moxley and AEW were responsible for exhibiting gross negligence, suggesting by going off script and violently shoving plaintiff, who was only a crew member, to the ground, Moxley demonstrated a substantial lack of concern for whether a severe injury would result to a production crew member at the event. In taking no precautions or preventative measures to protect production staff, defendant AEW's actions likewise show a reckless disregard for the safety of production staff, which goes beyond simple inadvertence. The complaint also accuses AEW of negligence in hiring and training Moxley. Training him, really? I love it. Who exactly trained Jon Moxley while he was under employ here to AEW? I would love to know. A portion of Count 1 claims AEW has a responsibility to exert reasonable control over its employees, agents, and/or contracted individuals to ensure the safety of other performers, production crew, and the general audience. The 39-year-old Moxley has been wrestling since 2004 and has worked for not only AEW, but WWE, TNA, New Japan Pro Wrestling, and other promotions throughout his career. Dispenza's legal representation tells the Takedown on SI that he claims AEW upper management was aware of the incident, but says he never discussed it with them. He alleges to have met with Tony Khan and AEW General Counsel Chris Peck about potential full-time employment opportunities in the months after the incident, but acknowledged that there was never a prior conversation about the injuries he says he sustained. His attorney also noted Dispenza said he never filed an official incident report that night because he had another job on tour that he had to get back to, but he claimed that he spoke with 3 individuals that evening about getting hurt. His legal team said Dispenza relayed his alleged injuries to ringside physician Dr. Michael Sampson, director of performance psychology Chris Manzione, and a member of the athletic training staff. Dispenza claims Sampson was upset over the situation, saying that all stunts or interactions outside the ring must be approved by Sampson beforehand. Sampson was near Dispenza when the incident occurred. He said Sampson asked him to go see the training staff. Dispenza's representation told the Takedown on SI that he was eventually told he would not be treated any longer by the AEW athletic training staff and that the incident was never acknowledged again. It also said Dispenza and Moxley never discussed the incident beyond briefly after the segment. His team says he's looking to obtain compensation for injuries suffered due to the actions of the wrestler and the company he worked for, and the filing says the amount in controversy exceeds $25,000. And by the way, I see some people saying, oh, it's such a low dollar amount, it's just, what's the big deal? Just pay it and get it over with. I think that it doesn't mean that he's suing for $25,000 or $30,000. There must be some threshold and it exceeds 25. It could be 250 for all we know. It doesn't mean he's suing for 25K. It claims he incurred damages including but not limited to medical expenses, disability, permanent and serious disfigurement, wage loss and lost earnings capacity, pain and suffering, exemplary damages for mental and emotional anxiety, humiliation and or indignity. Well, now we're just getting ridiculous here. Diminution to business, reputation, and opportunities, other economic and non-economic damages not yet known, and all other damages available under Michigan law. The lawsuit states that the extent of his injuries are still unknown at this time. Defendant Moxley's actions did harm the plaintiff, the extent of which is still unknown as plaintiff continues to have physical issues related to the incident. The Takedown on SI reached out to an AEW spokesperson regarding the lawsuit and the allegations, to which they replied, AEW does not comment on pending litigation. A status conference for the lawsuit is scheduled for August 29th. And then there's some other points here that I pulled from elsewhere from the actual lawsuit, just about the incident real quick. Plaintiff was tasked with holding a screwdriver for defendant Moxley to use during the performance. Plaintiff was not a performer and was not warned of spontaneously becoming one. Plaintiff held the screwdriver for Moxley to take from his hand as intended and scripted. Upon receiving the item and without warning, explanation, or prior discussion, defendant Moxley unexpectedly deviated from the planned script by placing his hands on plaintiff's face and shoulder and violently shoving him to the ground. Plaintiff sustained extensive injuries as a result of this violent and unscripted assault, ultimately culminating in surgical procedure. They actually misspelled this here. In surgical procedures of cervical spine surgery, shoulder surgery, plus other serious injuries that necessitate significant medical treatment. I did see video of the shove that is described here, and it does look very mild. You would read this and think that, man, he got shoved with such violent force. It doesn't come across that way in the video. But so, of course, a lot of people are making fun of this and mocking this. And, he's just trying to get money. He's faking it. He's lying and this and that. I would assume that this man has medical records and has, some receipts, so to speak, that he is bringing to the table here. There's a lot we don't know here. As far as what people like Tony Khan knew or did not know about this. He says he talked to 3 different people at the time about the incident, but he didn't file a report. He didn't report it to anybody, and he was still working with the company, not directly, but it's not as if he stopped doing all work for AEW after this incident. So there's a lot of questions about this lawsuit. But here's the reality of the situation and why this guy's going to get paid. If the guy did get hurt, and it would be very easy to prove, whether or not, he had a cervical injury, cervical, operation of some kind, was there a pre-existing injury? Like this should all be easily provable. If the guy did get hurt and he's looking to use the legal system here a couple years later for the purposes of getting his medical bills paid, because he's got this mound of medical bills that just continuing to mount. This is a country where you can easily go bankrupt, okay, from medical debt. Then more power to him. Tony Khan can easily cut the guy a check and make all this go away and not bat an eyelash. Reality is, if he really wasn't given a heads up that Moxley was going to put his hands on him, no matter how tame the shove may have looked in the video, they bear at least some of the responsibility here regardless. Pay the man and be done with it. And then put a policy in place to make sure that this sort of thing doesn't happen again. Because if you have someone who is not trained and is not part of the show, they should not be taking bumps without first giving them a heads up and getting their permission. That's very stupid. I mean, this has nothing to do with people being soft or oversensitive or, oh my God, the video, I saw the video, it's such a joke, it didn't even look that bad. Like, they're not part of the show. You shove someone to the ground, they could easily get hurt. They could hit their fucking head on something. Anything can happen. It's one thing to let them know, hey, look, I'm gonna shove you to the ground. Are you cool with that? But if that's not what happened here, then yes, Moxley and or AEW bears at least some, if not a lot, of the responsibility here, in my view, which is why this guy's going to get paid. At the end of the day, I think that's how this ends. This ends with him getting paid, and AEW needs to make sure that this sort of thing doesn't happen again, because you should never put your hands on somebody like that. It's one thing to, like, you grab them by the lapels, or something like that to intimidate them. But if you're going to physically shove someone to the ground and not even give them a heads up that you're going to do something like that, then this is the sort of thing that could happen. And there's nobody that should be defending that aspect of this case. And no matter what you think of the actual shove itself, it's almost irrelevant here. The man was assaulted. Pay up.